Welcome to the world of science fiction. I am Adam, your narrator, where extraordinary tale come to life. Enjoy the journey. He risked everything to warm a frozen alien, and she gave him more than gratitude. The howling winds of Proxima 9 clawed a Tez-San Noack thermal suit as she trudged across the frozen terrain 6 months into her 18-month solo terraforming assignment, and she was already talking to her equipment just to hear a voice, any voice besides the instructional recordings sent weekly from Central Command. Come on, you stubborn thing, she muttered, adjusting the geological scanner strapped to her forearm. The device had been acting up all morning, showing energy fluctuations where there should be nothing but ice and rock. Just need to finish this quadrant before the storm hits. Tessa had chosen this assignment specifically for its isolation after the messy end of her relationship with the project director. Back on Earth, 18 months alone on an ice planet seemed like the perfect escape. No drama, no heartbreak, just work and silence. The scanner beeped suddenly, reading spiking off the charts. Tessa frowned, tapping the display. That can't be right according to the scanner. Something with a complex molecular structure and faint energy signature lay about 20 m below the surface. Something that definitely wasn't just ice or rock. Protocol was clear: document, report, and wait for instructions. But the brewing storm would make communication impossible for at least 3 days, and curiosity had always been Tessa's weakness. Just a quick look, she decided, unclipping the compact plasma drill from her belt. Nothing wrong with gathering more data. 2 hours later, sweat freezing inside her thermal gear despite the suit's regulators. Tessa breached the final layer of ice and gasped. There, perfectly preserved in the crystalline chamber, was a humanoid figure, tall and lithe with iridescent azure skin and delicate fin-like structures along the forearms. The being appeared male with facial features both alien and strangely beautiful. Impossible, she whispered, her breath fogging her helmet. There had been no records of intelligent life on Proxima 9, certainly nothing this human-like. The storm was closing in fast. She could hear its approach like a freight train in the distance, making a split-second decision that would cost her job if discovered. Tessa activated her hover sled and began carefully extracting the frozen alien. I must be insane, she muttered as she secured the ice-encased figure to the sled. Completely, utterly insane. The journey back to her outpost was a blur of white wind and adrenaline. By the time she maneuvered the sled into the airlock, the storm was in full force, battering the reinforced structure with howling fury inside the relative warmth of the outpost's main chamber. Tessa assessed her unauthorized specimen. The alien remained perfectly preserved, showing no signs of decay despite what must have been centuries, perhaps millennia, frozen in the ice. Even more surprising, her bioscanner detected something impossible, negligible but present, metabolic. Simply something in his quiet acceptance of such a devastating reality touched Tessa deeply. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand in hers. I'm sorry, she said, but you're not alone now. As their fingers intertwined, the warmth of connection, human and alien, flowed between them, and the howling storm outside seemed suddenly less cold, less empty than before. The storm raged for 3 days, trapping Tessa and Jareth in the small confines of the outpost. By the second day, Jar's grasp of language had improved dramatically through their continued Contact, each touch exchanging more than just warmth. The telepathic connection allowed him to absorb English with astonishing speed, though certain concept still eluded him. Your species builds walls, Jarth observed, watching Tessa prepare a protein-rich meal that her scanners suggested might be compatible with his physiology. Between each other, between thoughts, Tessa smiled wryly. Is it that obvious to me? Yes. His luminescence pulsed gently as he spoke, a visual symphony that Tessa found herself increasingly mesmerized by. Sarian share freely thoughts, emotions, memories. They flow between us like water. That sounds terrifying, Tessa admitted, placing a bowl before him. No privacy, no secrets. Jareth considered this, tilting his head in that distinctive way that made her heart skip. Perhaps, but no loneliness either. The word struck a chord. Tessa had convinced herself she'd chosen isolation on Proxima 9, but in truth isolation had chosen her long before. She'd built her wall carefully, brick by brick, relationship by failed relationship. Try this, she said, changing the subject. It should be safe for your system. As Jareth cautiously tasted the food, Tessa's communication system suddenly crackled to life. The storm was beginning to clear enough for signals to penetrate. Engineer Novik, this is Central Command. We've detected unusual power fluctuations at your outpost. Report status immediately. Tessa froze, eyes darting to Jareth, who watched her with those unnerving silver eyes. Discovery meant Jareth would be taken away, studied, perhaps even dissected. She couldn't let that happen. Just a small equipment malfunctioned during the storm, she replied smoothly. Had to re-out power, everything stable. Now we'll send full report after storm passes. Acknowledged. Maintain standard protocols. When the transmission ended, Jarth spoke softly. You lied for me. I did. Tessa sat heavily across from him. If they knew about you, they wouldn't understand. To them you'd be a specimen, not a person. Jareth reached across the table, his fingers hovering over hers. May I? Tessa nodded, and as their hands connected, the now familiar rush of shared consciousness flowed between them. This time she intentionally opened her mind further, showing him her fears, her reasons for protecting him. In return she glimpsed fragments of his world, the harmonious Sarian collective consciousness, the betrayal by those who sought to weaponize their telepathic abilities, his desperate choice to flee into the frozen wastes rather than be used as a weapon of war. When they separated, Tessa's eyes were damp. You sacrificed everything, as did you, he replied, his gaze intense. For a stranger you're not a stranger anymore, she said softly. The days that followed created a rhythm between them. Tessa continued her terraforming work, careful to maintain appearances with Central Command, while Jareth explored the outpost with childlike curiosity, delighting in simple things like the hydroponics garden or the holographic star maps. At night they talked for hours. Jarth told her of Sarian culture, their symbiotic relationship with their world, their art forms that engaged all senses simultaneously. Tessa shared Earth's history, its beauty and its flaws, its music and literature. Sometimes they simply sat in silence. Jareth's bioluminescence synchronized with the beat of Tessa's heart, a silent communion more intimate than any she had known. Your isolation ends in 15 weeks, Jarth noted one evening as they watched the aurora dance across Proxima 99's night sky through the observation dome. What happens then? The question had been haunting Tessa for days. A new team arrives. I'm supposed to return to Earth, and I would be Discovered, yes, the thought of leaving him behind, of watching him being taken away by researchers who wouldn't see his humanity, made her chest ache. Jarth was quiet for a long moment, his luminescence dimming. I have been scanning the stars. Each night there are patterns familiar. Constellations. I believe some of my people may have survived, rived, colonized distant worlds. Tessa's heart sank. You want to find them? Yes, he said, turning to face her, but not alone. The implication hung between them. A fragile, impossible hope. Jarth, I can't. Just why not? His silver eyes reflected the dancing lights outside. What holds you to your world? You chose this isolation for a reason. He was right, and they both knew it. Earth held little for her now, a failed career, empty relationships, a sense of never quite belonging. Before she could respond, the proximity alarm blared. Tessa rushed to the console, heart racing. It's a ship, she said, scanning the readings. Not one of ours. It's Jarth. It's not human. Hope and fear battled across his features as he joined her at the console. The ship's design was sleek, crystalline, unmistakably Sarian. They found me, he whispered. How after all this time? Jareth's hand came to rest over his heart. The guardian link. When you revived me, it reactivated. They would have sensed it, followed it. Here Tessa felt cold dread spreading through her veins. What will they do? They will welcome me back, he said, though uncertainty tinged his voice. But your people, if they discover another species has reached this world, the implications were clear. Human history was filled with first contact scenarios gone wrong, with fear triggering violence. We have to make a choice, Tessa said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse, and we have to make it now. The Sarian ship would land within the hour. Central Command would detect it soon. After 2 worlds potentially on the brink of disastrous first contact, and somehow they stood at the fulcrum. Come with me, Jareth said, taking her hands in his as their minds touched. Tessa saw visions of world she'd never imagined, felt the welcoming embrace of the Sarian collective consciousness, not invasive as she once feared, but warm, accepting, a place where her walls could finally come down. What about my contract? My responsibilities here? Even as she spoke the words, they sounded hollow. Your work here was to prepare this world for life, Jareth said gently. Perhaps your true purpose is to prepare 2 peoples for each other instead. Head Tessa looked around the outpost that had been her prison and her refuge. Then she looked at Jareth, at the impossible connection they'd forged across species, across time itself. Decision made, she moved quickly, downloading all her research data, preparing messages explaining her discovery, messages that would reach Central Command only after she was gone. Not a defection, but a diplomatic mission. Not an ending, but a beginning. As they stepped outside into the frigid air to meet the approaching Sarian ship, snowflakes swirled around them, catching in Tessa's dark hair and melting on Jar's luminescent skin. Are you afraid? He asked, his silver eyes searching hers. Tessa smiled, squeezing his hand as the ship descended in a shower of crystal and light. Not any more above them. The aurora painted ribbons of color across the stars, the same stars that would guide them to new worlds, new possibilities, and a life where neither of them would ever be frozen or alone again. The cold that had once separated them had become the very thing that brought them together, proving that even across the vast distances of space and the impossible gulfs between species, warmth could be found in the most unexpected places. English, auto-generated. All from Galactic Triumph. Activity, you're alive, she whispered, placing her hand on the ice somehow. You're still alive in there, Tessa knew. The proper procedure would be to maintain containment, document everything, and wait for the science team to arrive. Which would take months, but if this being was truly alive, waiting might mean death. She made her decision and began the careful process of controlled the using the medical regeneration equipment meant for emergency field treatments. Hours passed as she monitored vital signs that made little sense compared to human baselines. As the ice melted away, the alien skin began to glow faintly, pooling with an internal bioluminescence that bathed the room in soft blue light. Don't die on me, Tessa murmured as she worked. You've survived this long, just a little longer. As the last of the ice melted away, the alien's chest suddenly expanded in a deep shuddering breath. Tessa stumbled backward, heart racing as elongated fingers twitched, then curled. Impossibly, his eyes opened, revealing irises like liquid silver that seemed to capture and reflect the light around them. For a moment neither moved. Tessa frozen in place by shock and wonder, the alien blinking slowly as if gathering his bearings, then with surprising grace, for someone recently thawed from a millennia long ice nap, he sat up. Tessa's hand moved instinctively to the stun button at her belt. Not that it would help much if this turned ugly. The alien noticed the movement and tilted his head, studying her with those unnerving silver eyes. Then he spoke, his voice like water flowing over stones in a language her universal translator couldn't begin to comprehend. I can't understand you, Tessa said, keeping her voice calm. Despite her racing pulse, the alien watched her lips move, then raised a hand to his own throat. Looking frustrated, he closed his eyes for a moment, and Tessa gasped as the bioluminescent pattern across his skin shifted and pulsed rapidly. When his eyes opened again, he pointed to himself. Jareth, he said clearly. Jareth, she repeated. I'm Tessa. She pointed to herself. Tessa, he echoed the name, sounding musical in his strange voice. His next words were slow, halting, as if each one required immense concentration. You freed me. You speak English, Tessa asked, stunned. Jareth touched his temple. Learn from contact, slow, difficult realization dawned. You're telepathic. You're learning from me. Somehow, he nodded, then suddenly shivered violently. Tessa noticed his skin's luminescence dimming. You're cold, she said, grabbing thermal blankets from the medical cabinet here. When she draped the blanket over his shoulders, their hands brushed. A jolt like static electricity passed between them, and for a split second Tessa saw flickering images, a crystalline city under twin moon ships, like translucent shells gliding through an aurora-filled sky, then fire and darkness. She yanked her hand back, heart pounding. What was that memory? Jareth said, his voice stronger now. My home, my past. His silver eyes met hers, filled with something like wonder. You are kind most with fear. Oh, I'm definitely afraid, Tessa admitted with a small laugh, but I couldn't just leave you there. It didn't seem right. Jareth studied her face with such intensity that Tessa felt heat rise to her cheeks. Finally he spoke again, his words clearer now. I am Sarian, last of the Guardians. I was betrayed, trapped in ice during the great conflict. He paused, struggle evident on his face. Long time I don't know, Tessa answered honestly. From the depth and ice formation, it could have been thousands of years. Jareth closed his eyes, his luminescence pooling with what Tessa somehow knew was grief. When he opened them again, they shimmered with moisture. That caught the light like diamonds. Then all I knew is gone, he said.